Hey guys, so I have a little bit of a new setup behind me. I decided to rearrange my room and switch up the filming location. So my original idea was to get more natural light coming in and to just hopefully have a prettier setup, but it's storming outside and there were weird shadows all over my face, so it didn't work out today. I did not do a June wrap up, and so today I'm doing my June and July wrap up. So I have quite a few books to talk about today, so I'm gonna go ahead and just jump on in. The first book that I read in the month of June was The Diviners by Libba Bray. I read this for my reading booktuber favorites, and I read this for Life with Liv's favorite, previously Liv's Library. I go pretty in depth in that vlog on my thoughts on this, so I won't ramble too much, but basically there are these murders happening in this town and no one knows who's doing it. Our main character Evie is trying to help her uncle figure out what's going on. There are these people who have powers. Evie is one of them. Whenever she holds an object of someone's, she can learn about them or see something from their past, basically. And so that's her power, but we also follow some other people who have different powers, but those people are called the Diviners, hence the title. There is a lot in this book that I still have questions about. It is a series. I think there are 2 or 3 other books, so I did end up ordering the second one right after I finished this because I was just left with so many questions. I did end up rating this at 3.75 out of 5. Evie was a little annoying and immature at first, which was really distracting me from the story, but she is a character that grows a lot and I ended up really liking her at the end, so I'm excited to move on with the books and to learn more about the world, about the Diviners, and all of that good stuff. Next, I read The Romance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. So this follows Gavin Scott. He's a baseball player who is having marital problems with his wife, Thea. I hope is how you say her name. He really wants to save the marriage, and so his teammates swoop in and introduce him to the world of romance novels. They give him a book called Courting the Countess, and he is basically using this as a how-to guide of how to win his wife back. And I just found this book hilarious. I found it so cute and I really loved it. One thing I really loved was the characters. I thought they were so well done. I was such a sucker for Gavin, and I've mentioned a few times I recently graduated with my master's in speech language pathology, and there was a great stuttering rep in this book. I was so happy to see it. One thing that Gavin mentions throughout the book is how important it is to him that his wife has always let him talk and has never looked down on him for his stutter. She has never talked for him, and just how much that meant to him. I also really loved his wife Thea. I felt like I related to her a lot, although I am not a baseball player's wife and I do not live the life she lives. Her issues with feeling like she doesn't fit into certain groups or feeling like she has to be someone else, I think that a lot of us have been there before, and so that definitely felt relatable. They both just felt so real, and I really loved both of them. I ended up rating this book 4.75 out of 5 stars, which I feel like is just the most nitpicky score, but the one thing about this book that I just did not like were the little excerpt things of the book that Gavin was reading. There would be chapters which were not long, but there still were full chapters where we were reading the book that Gavin was, and I could not have cared less for those characters. I didn't know them. I didn't care if this dude got the girl back. I didn't, and I understand that it helped explain why Gavin was doing the things he was doing, but I wish it would have been done in a different way, because I would be so invested in the story about Gavin and his wife, and I would want to know what was going to happen, and then all of a sudden it would cut to courting the Countess, and I didn't care. I couldn't see knocking off like half of star because I loved the book so much, but I did knock out a 4th of a star because I did not like that about it. But other than that, I really loved this book. I highly recommend it. It was so cute and so good. Next, I read Know My Name by Chanel Miller. She was the woman who was sexually assaulted by Brock Turner at a Stanford party. This book was amazing. It was so powerful. Just hearing her experience in her own words was just heartbreaking. It filled me with so many emotions. I was sad, I was angry. For example, learning about how Brock's family and his defense team went about things, using her family against her to make her look bad and everything. It was so awful, but this book is so important. It was so good. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. She is such a strong woman, and this is like a must read book. I highly recommend it. It is so good. Next, I read Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. So this book follows Louise. She is a secretary, I believe, at a psychiatrist's office. She finds out that a new psychiatrist is going to be moving into the office, so she's going to be working for someone new, and she finds out that it is David, who was a guy that she had a drunken makeout with one night. So that's already an awkward situation. And then she finds out that David is actually married, so it makes it even more uncomfortable. She ends up running into his wife on the street one day, and the wife, Adele, asks her to coffee, and the two become friends. And so it's just this weird little mix-up of secrets and weird things going on. Their marriage is definitely not okay. You're finding out some secrets about that, and basically it is just this whole big mess of a situation. There's not too much I can say without giving away spoilers, but like I said, their marriage is just not very healthy. Things are definitely going wrong. This book kept me guessing. I did not know where it was going in the slightest. This book had the craziest ending I think I've ever read in a book. With thrillers, I always try to guess the ending. I feel like everybody does. You just want to see if you can outsmart the book, and a lot of times I can be on the right track, or I don't know, I have an idea. Usually it's setting up for something to happen, and usually the reader can follow along with that. But this book, I had no earthly idea what was going to happen. I had so many crazy ideas and so many crazy theories about this book, and none of them were right. Just not even close. I don't think I could have guessed it if I tried, obviously, because I didn't. I ended up giving it 4 stars because it did get a little slow at some point, but it still had such a strong ending. I thought it was nuts. After I read it, I think I just stared into the abyss for a while, and then I made Mark sit and listen to me ramble about this book for probably 30 to 40 minutes because I needed to explain to someone everything that happened. I would recommend it if you are someone who predicts the ending to spoilers a lot and you just feel like you're getting bored and you want a challenge. Read this book and tell me if you can guess the ending, because I would love to know if anybody has ever guessed the ending to this. If you have, you're a genius. Next, in June, I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Azevedo. This was actually my first Elizabeth Azevedo book. I was very apprehensive to pick this one up because it is written in verse, and I am not the biggest poetry fan. I just feel like whenever I try to read poetry and get into it, I don't get what everybody else sees. I mean, I love lyrics to music, which I know are poetry, but I don't know why when I read it in a book, I can never relate. I can never get that deep, meaningful thing. But this book was actually a pleasant surprise. This follows, I'm gonna say it wrong, Xiomara, I'll put it here. She decides to join her poetry club at her high school, and it basically just follows her time doing that. It brings up a lot of important topics of sexual harassment and family and religion that I think are very important topics that should be brought up more in contemporary young adult books, especially since I do think that a lot of young kids probably deal with, you know, having different opinions than your family and dealing with boys not leaving you alone at school. And I don't know, it felt like very real problems. I don't know, I like that those things were explored in this book. I listened to this on audio, which the author actually reads herself, and Elizabeth Acevedo does an amazing job at reading this book. I mean, she reads it like it was meant to be read, and so I think that that might have also helped me enjoy this more, because the passion and just that she puts behind reading the book, I don't know if that makes sense, but it was so good. I am really excited to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's books. Her most recent release, Clap When You Land, I've heard nothing but great things about, so I'm so excited to get to that. And I'm really excited to get to With Fire on High, which I bought I think last month, so I'm excited to get to those, and I'm excited to have found a new author that I enjoy. I know I've only read one book, but it was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and yeah, so maybe I'll start reading more books in verse. Who knows? Next up was a reread for me, and that was Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I am trying to read all of the Twilight books before I pick up Midnight Sun, which is coming out for me tomorrow. Whenever this comes up, it's probably already out. I remember back in middle school being so obsessed with Twilight. I read this and thought that it was just literary gold, that it was perfect, that it was amazing. It didn't get better than this. I knew I wouldn't have those feelings, but I was hoping I would have the warm, fuzzy nostalgia feelings with this, and unfortunately I just did not get that with this book. I ended up giving this book 3 stars because back in the day it was a full-on 5-star book for me, but honestly now it was probably more of a 2-star, but I couldn't rate it that. I had to give it a 3 just because of how much I used to love it. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I just cannot stand Edward Cullen. I think that he is creepy, he's controlling, he's just gross. I don't like him, and I think that their relationship is so unhealthy with how obsessed not only she is with him, but that he is with her. I mean, he follows her when she goes out with her friends. He watches her while she sleeps. It's just icky. Plus, he is not a 17-year-old boy. I know that he looks like one, but he's like 100 years old. If this was a romance where he looked his age, if he could live that long, that would be so creepy. Could you imagine how creepy that would be? And so that's what I was thinking the whole time, is just like, I understand the argument where he has been waiting for someone that gives him the feelings that Bella did, and he finally has it, and so he doesn't want to lose it. But it's creepy. I don't like it. No. I know things change as it goes along with Jacob, but I'm just such a Team Jacob gal. I was Team Jacob before I even knew Taylor Lautner was going to be playing him in the movie. I just remember feeling so bad for him because Bella really uses him for information in the beginning, and when he begins to develop feelings, Edward is so angry about it and Bella's annoyed, and I just remember feeling so bad for him because he never really does anything wrong in this book. I feel like he just genuinely cares about her, and I feel like Edward just wants to keep her, and that just whole thing annoys me. I don't like it, so I just wasn't the biggest fan of this. But keeping on the Twilight train, the first book I finished in July was actually New Moon by Stephanie Meyer, and I had very low expectations of this because my reread of Twilight was pretty disappointing, and this was actually my least favorite book when I was a youngin', so I didn't have super high expectations for this, but I actually ended up really liking it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I think a big part of that was because Edward was not in this book. We got to learn so much more about Jacob. I liked seeing more of Bella and Jacob together, and even if they are not sparking a romance. I just really like the friendship between them. I just really like Jacob so far. Like I said, I know things change, but I really like him in this book. I think he just really treats her like a person rather than an object, and I think that Edward just thinks that he owns Bella and that she is his possession, and I don't like that. And I know that some people do not agree with that, but that's how I view it, and I'm just not a fan of him. Hopefully reading Midnight Sun will change my mind about Edward. I'll get a look into how he is thinking, because everything's just as an outsider, but I just don't see how my mind will change about a 100-some-year-old vampire who is stalking a 17-year-old girl. So we'll see as the story goes on, but so far my reread has been interesting. One of my favorites I didn't like, my least favorite I enjoyed. So who knows? Do I even remember the story of Twilight? Apparently not. The next few books I read for the reading rush, and I actually made a reading rush vlog, so I will put the link in the description down below if you would like to get some more in-depth in the moment thoughts on those books. But right now I'm just kind of going to give a brief synopsis and a few brief thoughts on it. So the first book that I read for the reading rush was Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. That's probably not how you pronounce it, but there is the author's name. So this follows 17-year-old Elio. He lives in Italy in the 80s, and Oliver comes to stay with his family and work with his father. Feelings develop between the two. I think I liked watching the relationship form more as an outsider rather than inside Elio's head, which is how the book is told, because I watched the movie before I read the book, and I think I loved the movie so much because it was just very beautiful watching these two have that relationship that you're kind of guessing, you know, well, what's Oliver thinking? What's Elio thinking? And then seeing them come together, it's very beautiful in my opinion. And I think in the book, just reading Elio's unfiltered thoughts, it wasn't my favorite way to hear the story. I don't know. Maybe I would think differently if I hadn't seen the movie first, because I do really love the movie, so I think I just had such high expectations, and it just didn't really live up to those high expectations. Like I said, it's unfiltered thoughts from Elio, and he has some pretty explicit thoughts about Oliver, and I think just watching those scenes was much different than reading about it in his head. I mean, the famous peach scene was much different to read about than watch. I just felt like I was intruding sometimes. It was not my favorite, but that's okay. I ended up rating it 2.5 stars, and it doesn't change how I feel about the movie. I would like to rewatch the movie now that I've read the book, but I definitely would recommend the movie. Next, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. So this follows January. She is a romance author, and her father passes away, and she actually goes to stay at his beach house to clean everything up, and she meets her neighbor, who is actually Augustus Everett, who is a literary fiction author and her arch nemesis from college. And so these two are both in a bit of a writing slump, and they decide to do a little bit of a challenge where Augustus is going to write a romance novel and January is going to write a literary fiction novel. So I loved this so much more than I thought I was going to. I mentioned it many times in my vlog that this just had everything that I feel like I've been looking for in a romance novel. I just loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. Incredible. I would highly recommend picking this one up. I really wanted to read this on the beach. My family and I were going to go on vacation, and I had it all planned out, but coronavirus said no, but I still enjoyed it reading it here at home. It is a favorite of the year. It is an all-time favorite. I would recommend it. It was so good. Lastly, for the reading rush, I read My Sister the Serial Killer by this author here. I really have been doing awful with names, so I don't want to mess that up further. But this title pretty much tells you what it's about. It's about our main character, Corey Day. I believe is how you say it. She finds out that her sister Ayula has been killing off her boyfriends, and we just follow their journey. This was a really quick read for me. I read it in a day. It's only like 200 some pages, and the audiobook is only about 4 hours, so you can fly through it pretty quickly. While I did like that it was pretty fast paced, the one thing that I wish I would have gotten with this book is that there would have been more character development and plot development. I feel like this book and storyline had so much potential, and it just was very rushed, and instead of getting to know the characters a little bit and then getting the build up into how everything happens, we were just kind of thrown into it and told to figure it out, is how I kind of felt. And everything that happened was really interesting, but I was just kind of left wanting more. And so for that reason, I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. It was really a crazy book. It was interesting, but I just really wish there would have been more build-up and more suspense rather than just everything kind of happening so quickly, because there were some times where I just felt really lost because so much was going on. I would say I enjoyed it more than I didn't, but I definitely was left wanting more of the story and more of the characters. Last but certainly not least, we have The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I had this on my Reading Rush TBR and I just did not have time to get to it, but I did end up finishing it in time to put it in this wrap up. This is about a girl named Natasha. She is being deported back to Jamaica, where her and her family are from. That day she meets Daniel, who has an interview with Yale, and we basically just follow them throughout the day, with Natasha finding out how she can stay in the US and keep her life that she's grown up with, and Daniel basically deciding if he even wants to interview with Yale and if he wants to become a doctor and do what his father wants him to do. I was really nervous to pick this up because I am not an insta-love fan. I feel like it usually brings me out of the story. I don't find it believable. I just do not like insta-love, and I knew that this took place over 12 hours, but so many people love this book and cherish it, and so I had to pick it up. The insta-love was a lot for me. I don't buy that in 12 hours you can be in love with someone. I don't. These two were talking about their children and their wedding, but I did enjoy this book. I definitely enjoyed the look into their families. So Daniel is Korean and Natasha is Jamaican, and even though their two situations are different, they can both relate to their families came to America because they wanted better lives, whether it was for themselves or for their children. And I really liked reading about that, and then we even got viewpoints from the parents, which was really cool. I liked reading that because you would hear how the kid views it and how their parent views it, and I just thought that was so interesting. I also really liked that when we would meet a character, usually we would get their point of view in the next chapter. I thought that was so interesting, how everyone was connected, and I don't know, I really did like the characters and how the story was written and everything. I just think the insta-love was way too much for me. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I would say I did like it more than I disliked it, which is why I gave it 3 stars. But one thing I thought was hilarious about this book is that it mentioned the 36 questions to falling in love with someone, or 36 questions that will make you fall in love with someone. And I had never heard of that before, but I have a friend who actually went on this blind date with this boy who asked her the questions. At dinner, he made her sit down and answer all 36 questions. And so when that was brought up, I just started laughing and I had to send it to her. She, however, did not fall in love with that guy, and I don't even think there was a second date, so it might be a little flawed. Maybe don't do that on a first date, but anyway, like I said, I enjoyed it. It was good. It was fine. I'm not meant for books with insta-love. That wraps up all of the books that I read in the months of June and July. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, let me know if you have read any of these books that I mentioned, and if you did make it to the end and liked this video, you can give it a big thumbs up. And if you would like to see more bookish content from me, please subscribe. I actually recently made it to 100 subscribers, which was awesome. Thank you to anyone who takes the time to watch my videos. I hope that you have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.